Peter chapter 2. You have been built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood that is offering spiritual sacrifices that are acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. You have been built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood that is offering spiritual sacrifices that are acceptable to God only through Jesus Christ. Now, God has done this thing to us. He has established Matthew 1 verse 1. Ikhuluma ngoJesu Christ, ikhuluma ngegenealogy kaJesu ithi owendlu kaDavide oyindodana kaJese. And therefore Christ himself comes from impande kaDavide, as God had promised ukuthi akuyo kungabi sabe bikho oyohlala ehlalweni sakho kuyoze kubuye uShiya. Uthi uPaul ngoJesu Christ uNkulunkulu senze ukuba sibe this royal priesthood, this holy priesthood, and this royal kingdom that we are. And therefore what he established through David, which became a kingdom that was never there before and came into existence only through David, God has established in us through Christ. Uthula bazalwane. It is something that may be difficult for people to understand when we say we are a kingdom. The church, when we talk about a church, we are not talking about the church lightly, informally, casually, fluidly. Ikakhulukazi ngalezi insuku where the political powers of the world and the economic powers of the world speak about religion and faith-based organizations as one of those things that people do when they, as a hobby, as a social club. We are not a social club. We are. Now you have to understand this in spiritual terms. We are a kingdom. We are a kingdom. We are a nation. And we who serve God have a royal priesthood that is not unsimilar to the priesthood of the ancient times. Ayihlukile kunopriest uNkulunkulu ayemisile ngesikhathi sika Moses. That is who we are. When we understand that we are who God says we are, it doesn't matter what the world says we are who God says we are. A nation of God, a royal priesthood, and a kingdom of God that has been established to offer spiritual sacrifices, to continuously offer spiritual sacrifices. And therefore we cannot be satisfied by a day in the royal courts of God. We cannot be satisfied by an hour in a week. We cannot be satisfied by a moment. When we understand our role in this society, our role in this nation, our role in this world during this time, we need to develop the same passion that David had. Yokuhlala endlini kaJehova nokusebenzela uNkulunkulu and honoring God and serving abantu bakaNkulunkulu so that they may constantly be light. So that they may constantly be light, and the children of God that are seeking the face of God will come into his sanctuary, meet the people of God, and say, indeed, uNkulunkulu sekhona phakathi kwethu. And therefore, bazalwane esivala lenkonzo nalomhlangano, the church cannot grow dim during these times. The church cannot grow dim during these times. There are times when the church may have been interrupted kune load shedding ebandleni. And God has given us those times. Sifikelwe yikhathi where the church kwasengathi liyadima kune load shedding. There were times when the church grew cold, and God sustained his people through his Spirit, through his faithfulness, wayihambela yena phambi kwabo. But in this time, during this season, esiyibona ngamehlo sonke that something great is brewing, something big is brewing and about to happen spiritually. The church, vusa noseduze kwakho lalela la mfowethu. Vuka manje. Kade walala kade waphumula vuka manje. It is time for the church to shine bright. It is time for the church to tap into its covenant. For the church, everything that we've been doing throughout this week, it is time for the church to tap into its covenant. It is time for the church to take its covenant seriously. It is time for the church to take its covenant seriously. And say, amasimu, omile, utshani, bomile, ngoba imvula beyingasani nokhanya kungasekho. But we know where it comes from. We know ukuba imvula enayo ivelaphi. We know ukuba ukukhanya kuvelaphi. We are not followers. We are not receivers and recipients. We are leaders. We are the head, not the tail. We are champions. We are pioneers. We are speakers. We are oracles. If you understand what an oracle is, we are oracles. Labo mama nabazali bethu ababema 8 imeleni ababema emabhasini ababema emakhoneni bakhulume ngezwi kaNkulunkulu ukuthi hey, have you ever known God? This is the time for you. Phendukani umbuso wenkosi sewusondele. This is the time for the church. It has been the time for the church. It is more so now the time for the church. David gets this revelation at the end of his life when he looks and he reflects back on his kingship and his reign. He says, God has been great to me. God has been wonderful to me. God has established me. If it wasn't for him, this nation would have been like any other nation. If it wasn't for God, this nation would have been like any other nation. But David says, God gave me this seat temporarily. But God was not on leave. People were fighting with God. And he says, God gave me this seat, gave me this authority, gave me this shield as the king, gave me these robes. But all of those things belonged to God. Nomkhonto engilwa ngawo ungumkhonto kaJehova. And therefore now the time has come, my son, for you to lead with wisdom and to lead with faithfulness and with righteousness. The time has come for you as a successful person to lead with full understanding, with righteousness and the fear of God. To be that light, to be that rain, to be that morning star, phakathi kwabantu esizweni, and say, God has made me successful endlini yakithi. But all the seats that he has given us, and all the crowns that he has given us, and all the robes that he has given us, and all the titles that he has given us, and all the honor that we receive, ukuthula kubazalwane, ukuthula kubazalwane, and everything that we are said to be, we are none of those things. We are none of those things. First of all, we are greater than those things. Abantu bajajuliswa ukuthi kuthiwe MEC ahambe sengazuthi uphethe umhlaba MEC wakwa social development. Kodwa kuma into zonke ngoba sekufika uMEC. Kufika uMEC. So, what is an MEC? Let me swear a little bit. What the hell is an MEC? What on God's earth is an MEC? What is an MEC? But people have been blinded. People have been blinded into believing ukuthi Power emhlabeni gives you the honor and the greatness. And the church has been fooled into believing that politicians are greater than the church. Kuma yonke into emabandleni uma kufike uminister. Minister who? Minister of what? Hey, nangu minister umhlonishwa. Hey, niza nonke niyoma lapha eminyango. Minister. Minister of what? God is revealing the true power in this generation. Whoever leads and whoever reigns, David, the greatest king, the greatest political leader of all times, came to understand the one who gave birth, both in the flesh and in the spirit, who gave birth to an everlasting kingdom. But he was a political leader. Let us talk about that. He was a political leader. And so political leaders who occupy any office must understand David was actually one of the greatest political leaders to ever live. At the end of his term in office, he writes this with his eye. I've come to understand. The Spirit of the Lord spoke to me, and he put these words on my mouth for me to speak. I am a king, I'm a political leader, but actually God has given me a gift because of my orientation and my heart towards him. God has made me understand. Hey, he has made me understand that no matter how busy I am as a leader, no matter how busy I am as a leader, I could never be satisfied by one day in the royal courts of God and spend 1,000 days elsewhere. Yeah. The reason we are seeing so much corruption from our leaders, our political leaders, our business leaders, our professionals that are supposed to be experts, that have learned so much and come to understand so much about ethics. Most people who go to university do a program on philosophy and ethics at some point. But some of the people who have done those programs get into power, they forget everything about ethics. People who are accountants and are in finance or are doing commerce, they learn about governance at some point. People who have done HR, they learn about people leadership at some point. But all of the people who have done MBAs learn all of these things at some point. But they get into power because power is elusive. The seat is elusive. The office is elusive. The title is elusive. The robes, the servants, the team that you have around you is very elusive. And suddenly people think, Uguti, I only need to spend 30 minutes in the house of God. And nakhona uma ngiyokhuluma because kune program ethile siyenzayo njengohulumeni. And they come here and bathawu ngiyayibingelela indlu yonke engcwele nabazalwane bonke abakhethekile. And I'm not saying that they basuke bezenzisa. But the amount of corruption that we are seeing is a true reflection of the spiritual drought and the spiritual emptiness that we who God has placed into roles of leadership actually have. We who God has made successful. We who God has given power to. We who God has given authority and dominion to lead this nation, to guide this nation, have forsaken the true source of power. And therefore, today as we come to the conclusion of this conference, I say these words and I've said them before, they are not new. But the Spirit is repeating the same message. The church must take its rightful position. The church must take its rightful position. God did not sustain the church so that the church could serve worldly powers. God did not sustain the church so that the church could serve worldly powers.